Hey guys, what's happening? Grincherz here, back with another video. Today we'll be doing deck tech number 5, featuring Kara Winterblade of the Vanar faction. Now, this is a general that I've been wanting to do something for quite a while. The problem is we haven't really had a ton of support for her in the game pre-Rise of the Bloodborne. And now that I've had a chance to evaluate her and play with the cards, I'm excited to bring this deck for you guys today. But before we get into the deck, I want to go over just a little bit of what Kara's problems have been lately. So, pre-October of 2016, her Bloodborne spell used to be the strongest in the game, bar none. She used to give all of the minions in her hand +1/+1, and this was important because it made cards that were already very fair, and like, for example, Ma, right? Opening Gambit, deal 2 damage to a minion nearby. And it also had a 2/2 stat line. You think, well, that's pretty fair. The general can punch it, it's done, but it got its value. Pretty fair card, right? Well, in the hands of Kara, when she Bloodborne spells once, it's a 3/3. You go, that's still not too bad. Well, if she Bloodborne spelled multiple times, 4/4 Ma, 5/5 Ma. Tack that on top of any tigers she was hitting, and you now have tigers that can hit for 5 to 6 damage by themselves for 3 mana. You start getting to these crazy levels of efficiency that make her too good. You know, that limits design space. So eventually, Counterplay finally saw that this was in fact a problem and nerfed her. And unfortunately, she got hit a little hard. And I say that because her change, well, interesting and unique, it being +1/+1 to all minions you summon this turn, meaning if you summon it, you play the Bloodborne spell, then all tokens, including walls, cards like Zix, things that come out of Voice of the Wind or Prismatic Illusionist, those types of cards, they all get +1/+1. And that, you know, it's a pretty good deal. You know, that allows for a lot of interesting interactions like Jack's True Sight and, you know, Gravity Wells getting 1/2. But unfortunately, that's just not quite going to cut it in a very tempo-oriented metagame where, you know, you need to be also removing minions and all that sort of thing in the same motions. And she didn't really have the ability to utilize these same old cards since Ephemeral Shroud got hit, and Blood Tier only going to 3/2 is pretty not that great. You know, still dying to the general. There's certain breakpoints that Kara was hitting before, and she's just not doing it now with the same cards that she was running before. So she's lost quite a bit of her edge. And what that does is make it difficult for people to engage with her and make it seem like she's not that great, and why not just run Fae? Well, Rise of the Bloodborne came out, and we got quite a few new Vanar tools. Most of them have been shown off by Fae in recent tournaments and on the ladder by high caliber players. But one of them really hasn't been doing much at all. In fact, most people really dislike this card or think it's underpowered or think it needs a buff. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's actually pretty good in Kara. Enter Grandmaster Embla. This card, I've fallen in love with it. It's really fun. The deck I've put together, utilizing Winter's Wake as well, has actually brought a whole new meaning to a control deck in Duelyst again. And that is hard to do, I think, for most lists and most cards. Now, is the deck perfect? Well, I'm sure it could be improved in some ways down the road. But right now, the version that I am currently running is actually 9-1, where we are in Diamond 2. I'll just hop over to that real quick. Yep. So as you can see, here's the history. Got quite a few games that I'm proud of, but we'll go over a couple replays with them later on in the video. But let's break down why this deck is actually performing the way it does and what the overall, what that means overall for Kara in the future. So Kara has problems, right? Her Bloodborne spell doesn't have good synergy with Hearth Sister like Phase does, where you can use Warbird to remove things. That makes some of her opponent's ability to apply pressure a little easier. Like they don't have to worry about Warbird, so they play minions wherever they can just to threaten her. So that can lead to a lot of situations where you get cornered or backed up. So what I've done is put together a unique removal package for Kara that has granted us a lot of safety nets in place and put us in a position to contest the board and remain in a healthy state. So we've got our standard Aspect of the Fox, which is 1 mana, transform any minion into a 3/3 Ravager, which is a little fox with no abilities. Now, this is useful both offensively and defensively, because you can use it to turn an opponent's minion into a 3/3. For example, 4 Winds or a Kalino in a corner. You go, boop, bye-bye. You're now a 3/3, and you are dispelled. But you can also use it with cards like Gravity Well. If I've got a 0/1 on the board, I can turn it into a 3/3. And if it's been sitting there a turn, it'll come out with Rush. So that's very, very powerful, and you get those types of moments a lot, which is very useful for removal early in the game as well as late in the game. Just overall, great card. Chromatic Cold. Now that Kara doesn't run Ephemeral Shroud, I've opted for Chromatic Cold, and I don't think Lightbender is worth running yet, because we have another card that came out with Rise of the Bloodborne and Feeble. All minions become 1/1. Now, that's great. It lets us trade into things. It also has a unique property of turning our Gravity Wells from 0/1s into 1/1s. Hey! That's even more utility. So now Gravity Wells can trade with things. It's actually pretty cool that interaction works out. The other synergy that Enfeeble has with our deck is Jack's True Sight. Now these guys come out naturally as 1/1s. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Grinch, if you BBS and you play Jack's True Sight, they're now 2/2s, and you're turning them into 1/1s. And I say, so what? That's still great value. Turning them back into 1/1s so you can start trading with anything on the board, pretty good. I'm very happy with it. Now our early game package that we're running is Blood Tears, Snow Chasers, Crystal Cloakers, and Hearth Sisters. Now all of these cards are designed to be very good with each other. Snow Chaser is very good with Gravity Well. Hearth Sister is very good with Crystal Cloaker. Blood Tear is also good with Gravity Well. These low-cost minions that have good value in the early game allow us to take control of it much more efficiently, or at least put ourselves in the lead of it before the opponent gets a chance to put us behind, which is, great. If you can deny your opponent just even their starting mana tile sometimes, that's almost good enough to get you from, am I gonna have a decent game to, all right, how do we finish this game? Games in Duelyst tend to get decided very early, sometimes as early as 5 mana, and we don't want to be on the lower end of that pendulum. So with Crystal Cloaker in mind as my power 2-drop, I've put in Hearth Sisters and Gravity Wells to give them the edge that they need to trade. Now you say, but Grinch, that card hasn't been seeing play for a long time. It's only good in Infiltrate. Why should I want to run that card? Well, my friend, the actual importance of this card is relevant to what is the most popular deck, in my opinion, in the ladder. That is Lionar. They're Argion or Zeron. They're top tier. Everyone's playing them. They can do no wrong. And what Crystal Cloaker does is devalues a lot of their minions. It trades very efficiently. With Azurite Lion, it trades and lives. With Windblade Adept, it can go 1-for-1. Scintilla, it trades 1-for-1. It kills Arclight Sentinel and lives. It kills Sunforge Lancer and lives. It lets you trade with Silverguard Knight with a Blood Tear or your General Punch. And it also kills Sunriser, should the need arise. So this card has so much value packed into it that I was overjoyed. when I remembered, wow, we have a 4/3 in the early game, and that alone is powerful enough to secure the early game against Lion-R, if you are, fortunate enough to play them, and even if you get a couple of Hearthstitcher plays, you feel pretty good. So already the early game faction Lion-R is now evenly matched, right? Or so we think, but most of the time it feels pretty okay. Now, the step up from that, I've got Tigers, which allow me to remove things that I must. It's a priority removal. It kills like key beholders, lets me kill silver guards with a punch as well. It functions how you would normally treat Saberspine Tiger in Gauntlet, but it also has the benefit of getting bonuses to its attack from our Bloodborne spell, and can make for sneaky lethals or even just good trades. Since it becomes a 4/3 with our Bloodborne spell, it can kill a 2/3 and live, which is, what the heck? Sorry. So that's pretty much why I've put the card in the deck. Yeah, sorry, that threw me off. Doing it live. So the next card that I put in here in the 4 slot is Emerald Rejuvenator, Razorback, and Sworn Sister Lakion. Sworn Sister Lakion is the draw engine I've decided for the deck. Emerald Rejuvenator, this card actually hasn't seen play in a long time. It's actually remarkable how effective this card has been lately. Now, the reason for its success in our deck is because we don't care about the general's HP. Now, if we get ahead very early, sure, we might care a little bit. Applying quite a bit of pressure could be good. You finish them off with a Tiger and a Razorback on 7 or something like that. You can do that, just if they have a very crappy hand. But that's not something you could bank on. And I care much more about my health and putting something really strong on the board. With our Bloodborne spell and 5 mana, this is a 5/5. Now, you think 5/5. Wow, that trades with literally everything. It kills all the Lion-R minions. It's really good against Magmar. It's good against Vanar. Like nobody, everyone looks at a 5/5 and panics. They go, I can't kill that efficiently. I have to take 5 damage. That's 20% of my general's health. Nobody likes hitting a 5/5. So, and it also one-shots Sojourners, which is pretty neat. But this card, since it heals you for 4, it makes any sort of early trading the opponent did not valuable. They hit you a couple times, boom, you're healed. Now you say, Grinch, you could play Azure Herald and do that. Well, I could, but I would not have my early game package that we've been so reliant upon to keep ourselves ahead in the early game. And that is why Emerald Rejuvenator has been so nice, because we don't care about the opponent's HP. All we care about is getting to our late game. And let me tell you, it's done wonders getting us there. It trades well, and healing for 4 on the opening gambit. Very nice. Now, Razorback is here as an alternative to Winter's Wake, should the game go that long with Embla. But it also has good synergy with our Jack's True Sight. So sometimes I win the games just by Jack's True Sight Razorback. An unanswered Jax is very strong. And while that's rare, it can happen. But I have so many ways to capitalize on having a big board that I felt Razorback was a good inclusion as a 2 of rather than a 1 of, and thus he's made the cut. Sworn Sister Lakion is my draw engine for the deck. Now you're saying, well, how come you're not running Sojourner or Spelljammer? Well, I decided that Spelljammer was too risky. This being because if the opponent is playing any sort of tempo deck or a deck that plays multiple cards a turn, I'm giving them free draw, and that's never good for me, because typically I'm holding on to multiple cards in my hand that have to be in there for a long time. Like Jack's True Sight, sometimes that doesn't get replaced. Chromatic Colds, Aspect of the Fox, I gotta hold on to those in case they do something silly. And Feebles, all sorts, and Frostburns against Lilith and stuff. So my hand tends to get kind of clunky in many ways, but it's a good kind of clunky. It's the, all right, half my hand is answers, half my hand deals with this turn, you know? So you hope to kind of balance that out, and rather than put in card draw just to keep my hand full for the sake of keeping it full, it's more or less come down to Lakeon refilling my hand with answers, and there's almost no bad cards that she pulls for us anymore. They're all situationally pretty useful. I've done work with Mesmerize, I've done work with Flash Freeze, I've done work with Polarity. There's all sorts of crazy cards that Lakeon can give you and you can make do with as Kara. And she also quite frequently tends to give us Winter's Wake, which is pretty funny. I think she's even given us a Winter's Wake Embla at some point, which was perfect. It's like, hey, that's exactly what I wanted. So, Lakeon, very nice. Excuse me, sorry. So, the other addition to the deck besides the Emblas and the Winter's Wake are the Frostburns. Can't go wrong. Some people like to run Scorns with Enfeeble, but in this type of deck, I feel that Enfeeble Scorning is quite frequently a bad decision, since most of the time, if Scorn is my only play or my best play, and it's going to wipe out like a Jack's Truce Sight or any Gravity Wells, that's a no-no. I'm suddenly now putting myself backwards instead of forwards. Even though I put the Scorn on the board, it probably isn't going to be good enough with whatever their turn is. So I've opted out of the Scorns and I've gone for 3 Frostburns, and I haven't looked back. It's been very successful. It deals remarkably well with Lilith, since it kills Blood Moon Priestess along with her whole board. It does very well against Lionar, who might play multiple 2-drops. It does very well in a lot of situations. Even though it spends your whole turn, it's really made a lot of our swarm problems against certain opponents much easier and much more manageable. So, and then down we have the Jack's Truce Sight, which can make them all 2/2s with our Bloodborne spell, and then Embla, who is the star of the deck, with our Bloodborne spell on 9 mana, which is the deck's goal. That's typically what you're going for. You don't, sometimes, like I said, you can go for those earlier wins, but those are unlikely and too risky, in my opinion. Most of the time you want to bank on your Emblas, and she really makes them pretty broken with your Bloodborne spell, since you can get the Blazing Spines, which are 4/4s. You get 1/2 Gravity Wells and 1/3 Bone Shield Barriers, which are very resistant, or resilient, I should say, to many forms of the AoE currently in the game. You'll see Magmars have Plasma Storm, but they have a bunch of Blazing Spines, and you have Winter's Wake in hand, so they don't kill all the Blazing Spines. They Plasma Storm and they walk away. Well, then you just chase them down with Winter's Wake. It's really cool. Also, Lionar, they can't wholly immolate everything if you surround their general enough. Sometimes they'll have good enough Dispel to get away from it, but if you're running Winter's Wake, and they probably won't Dispel them all, you can often capitalize off of this. So that's the deck, and I'm very proud of how it's been turning out lately. So what I'm going to do is show 2 replays now. One I'll load up right here. The other one is preloaded, and we will rock and roll. So this game here is against Eucharin. Some of you may recognize him. He is a Grandmaster. He won the first Duelyst World Championship qualifier. Excuse me there. Feeling a little ill, but trying to get through this. So, talking about the matchup really quick, he's playing Vath. Now, what do I know about Vath lately? They play Mechanters. Some of them play lots of rush minions. Some of them opt for more mid-rangey stuff. It's hard to say which one they will be, since they all still tend to run natural selections, thumping waves, and other cards that aren't very unique to any sort of Vath list. but can be played in multiple variants. So it's hard to identify just what you're playing against, and even Drogon Vath very early. So what I want to do is avoid overcommitting to too many Plasma Storms, or make sure I'm very okay with a Plasma Storm before I make any decisions on what... Make too many rash decisions. So this hand, pretty good. Both Jacks I think are going back. There's some argument for Snow Chaser and just keeping one Jax, but I think both Jacks go back. Yeah. And we get Grandmaster Embla and Winter's Wake. Thanks, game. Need both of those. So the Winter's Wake goes back, and the first thing you'll notice is the priority 2-drop. We have lots of openers in our hand. Well, which one's the best? Well, this is an opening gambit that can be utilized. Crystal Cloaker is vulnerable to natural selection if he plays a 2-drop as well. However, it is a much more sacrificial minion than, say, Snow Chaser is at this point. Since this is not Infiltrate, we want to get the Snow Chaser into Infiltrate before we bother playing it on the board. Otherwise, what was the point of putting it in the deck? So, Crystal Cloaker down. It has good synergy with Hearth Sister next turn. You see the Good Luck Have Fun. I'm fairly certain I Good Luck Have Fun him back. Sometimes the replays don't show them. But we actually get a little lucky here. He doesn't really have much he can do. So I only need 3 mana to play Hearth Sister and Snow Chaser, which is, important, since I am putting the Hearth Sister... I'm putting the Young Silithar next to the Crystal Cloaker and using my General to clear the egg, which is exactly what I was talking about in the deck building process, is that this is why this card is so powerful. It's still a 4/1. It's, going to do 4 damage to something else. The only real blowout we have here against us is, like, Scorn, but he still has to hit the Hearth Sister, so he still takes 4 damage either way this turn, and we still get the Snow Chaser back in our hand. So Scorn isn't even that bad. Downside is we don't have an efficient way to deal with it, but it's the price you pay for a little bit of tempo, which is kind of how we want to play this matchup. We want to have a better board state than them at most stages of the game, just because it lets us trade more efficiently and protect our general better. So he actually has quite the slow turn, which, first of all, I'm like, wow, Shroud and Vath, that's interesting. He plays a Shroud on my Snow Chaser, which means it will not come back to my hand. And that's tough cookies. So right away you go, well, okay, we have this in the corner. This isn't coming back. What do we do? You look at the board and you say, I could play Jack's True Sight. I could take this mana, and slam Jack's True Sight. Well, the problem with that is that he's going into his 5th mana crystal, which means he'll have access to Plasma Storm. Now, his Young Silithar will survive the Plasma Storm, presumably, because it will turn into an egg. We also do not get, if he doesn't have Plasma Storm, we also lose out on one of the spawns of Jack's True Sight, because the Young Silithar is blocking it. And our general would be forced to walk down to this mana tile, which is not really where we want to be. We're keeping our distance so Vath can't close it on us, right? And if Crystal Cloaker takes this mana tile, it would lose the attack value from Infiltrate, and it would no longer be immune to Plasma Storm. So we would lose literally everything on our board. And this is what I'm talking about. You don't want to overcommit into a Plasma Storm turn, because that's exactly how Magmar keep themselves above you, is efficient removal. So what the turn actually is, it's a replace a Jax, because I don't think I'm going to be even playing 2 Jax between the first Jax and Embla. I'm keeping the Embla because I know that's exactly how I'm going to win this matchup, and it's just going to be a matter of dealing with the board until Jax comes down and then reacting to how he reacts to Jax. So we find a Blood Tear. That's actually perfect. It lets us clear his whole board without actually losing the Snow Chaser, which is very annoying for him since he just spent that mana to dispel it, but it's still on the board. I haven't traded it. So we're going to play the Blood Tear on this mana tile. And we used our Bloodborne spell, so it's a 3/2. Now we're also going to play the Tiger as a 4/3 and set up shop above his Young Sildar and remove it. Now, once again, this makes us even more vulnerable to Scorn, but that's kind of good. Like, what if he had not had Plasma Storm and was holding on to Scorn instead? If he had predicted Jack's True Sight. So we're allowing ourselves to be slightly vulnerable while also maintaining pressure and keeping ourselves safe. This is like the perfect 3-star scenario for Kara. I'm not under immediate pressure, my board is pretty solid, and I'm forcing out some sort of response this turn. Now, Plasma Storm is not good this turn, so unfortunately we're not baiting that, because 2 minions live through it. He can punch one and one still lives, but that's not that great, right? So I'm hoping he just doesn't have Scorn and has to make a kind of a crappy play. And I think that's exactly what he does. Excuse the brief interruptions here and there. I've got a bit of a cough, but so we see an Overload. He actually does something kind of silly here. I remember this. He actually plays a Sunsteel Defender down back, but the silly part is that it dies to the Snow Chaser plus the Saberspine Tiger, which is, I'm kind of... Now, I was looking at how much damage I've got. I got 6, 9, 11. We could put him at 7 HP, but we would lose all of our board in the process. And if he Earth Sphered, he basically just nullified everything we did, and we have no board. So I decided that trading is the best course of action, because it frees up... it's going to get rid of the minion, which wouldn't die to Plasma Storm if I play Jack's True Sight this turn. And I'm going to slam the Jack's True Sight. He's only in reach of 1 unit. He has to play a card to deal with anything else. And I'm actually kind of hoping that if he has Plasma Storm, it's going to come out now rather than later. Right? So we played this, unfortunately he had it, but we're at a 10 health lead. It's a neutral board, and it's my turn. So I replaced the Razorback because I just lost my Jax, and I'd rather look for like another 2-drop or maybe a Lakeon, because our hand advantage is pretty low. So unfortunately I come up with Gravity Well. I mean, Enfeeble's a pretty good sight because it lets us kill things, but these Gravity Wells are going to have to do. Now, they are 1/2s, which, this is it's kind of tough to play around Macantor Warbeast with this. So what I did is I made sure that he could not clear them all unless he decided that Macantor was not going to hit me. And that's actually kind of subtle to most players, I think. Where would you play the Macantor Warbeast? It's a 4/4 with Frenzy. Frenzy meaning it can attack anywhere around the tile. So if he plays Macantor here, it'll attack my general and this. If he plays Macantor here, it'll attack my general and these. But the only way to remove all of these is to attack the back one and then play Macantor back here and clear them all. Now, that's good for me because if that is his play, which he's on 7 mana, it's a likely play. It's not going to hit my general, and it's going to be 2 tiles away, meaning I can back up and Macantor will not be able to strike me. So I planned for this, and sure enough, he actually does have the Macantor. I wanted to guarantee that if the Macantor was going to clear them all, there was room for me to run away. So he actually takes the play that with the Macantor that clears 2 of them and hits me, unfortunately. But we have that enfeeble, right? So rather than replace the Razorback, I say, you know what, I'm actually going to play this because I need a little bit of trading power. It's not worth the risk of replacing it into something that's much weaker at this stage, like a Blood Tier or something. So Razorback actually just fits the curve. It's a decent minion, lets me trade. Put it at my back to separate it from the Gravity Well. So if he has another Macantor, he can't, just get rid of it. There was no safe spot there, really, unless I wanted to give up the central tile positioning, and I wasn't willing to do that. So Natural Selection comes out, and a Healing Mystic. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm sure glad we drew that Lakion. So my Bloodborne spell resets next turn for Embla, so I go ahead and use it this turn. And rather than move away and play it, I decide I want to play it first. Just in case I got a card that I could utilize. I see a Winter's Wake and I'm ecstatic. I got this Embla I'm going to play next turn. Winter's Wake to help out. It's great. Even Cryogenesis is useful. It could pull Snow Chaser or Crystal Cloaker and do the damage, so it's not even bad. And we draw a Chromatic Cold. This is excellent. This hand is probably it couldn't get very much better. It couldn't get a whole lot better. But we did, like I said, we played this before moving, so he does get to clear this. However, it does a good job of playing goalie for us, which is phenomenal. Vath takes 3, we take 0. He's got 5, attack, which is pretty scary. But we're about to surround him with a ton of walls. So I move down 1 in this situation because the Healing Mystic can't reach me now, just in case. He has, Plasma Storm and I didn't get lucky. I'm also putting the Embla out of reach of what I would presume to be a potential Macantor via here, that would hit my general. So I didn't want the Embla here or here, and I figured any wall that comes out of Embla on this spot would die to the General Punch and would allow Embla to strike as well. So that was my reasoning behind this positioning for Embla, to play around in Macantor, because it could have been Macantor plus Thumping Wave, etc. So there were lots of reasons to be slightly worried that turn. We're pretty lucky that he had such a slow turn last turn. Drawing another Embla and more draw. We're in perfect late game scenario. Vath's seen better days. It's not typical that he gets put in the igloo. But here's that Plasma Storm we were worried about all game. Fortunately, Blazing Spines are... Unfortunately, I guess, we didn't have more Blazing Spines. But, fortunately for us, we did have 1 stick. Now, I don't know what his hand is, but it must have been very tight in this situation. Because the Tectonic Spikes, that's pretty desperate, right? You now put me on 6 cards, you dealt 3 damage to yourself, and you have no board. I guess he figured he had to risk it and look for cards to, like Earth Spheres and stuff for the next turn, and just hope that I can't do anything. Unfortunately, I have this great card called Winter's Wake, and he has to watch this 8/8 Iceberg slowly reach the middle tile and smack him. And that's GG. So, as you can see, a lot of our tech cards came in pretty handy there. I'm going to jump over to the other replay real quick. This one is against Foshizi Mainezi, who is a, they got 10 Songhai ribbons. They've got over 20 altogether. What do they got? 6, plus 8, 14, 15. They got 25 ribbons. So, you know, pretty good veteran. They're in diamond. They're making their climb right now. We're making our climb. So by no means am I going to assume that this guy is a slouch. However, I'm going to talk quite a bit about the misplays that I make this game, and I want to emphasize on quite a bit. I learned quite a few things this game. So right away, Foshizi opens up with no drop. I'm thinking, wow, that's really good for us. Ooh, that's even better for us. Crystal Cloaker, Gravity Well, well, you know what to do. Misplay number 1. So I learned quite a bit about this misplay right away. The misplay about this is actually, so it looks good, right? You have Gravity Well and you have Crystal Cloaker. Well, the misplay is in fact that Crystal Cloaker, if I was going to put it not where it could walk on top of this bottom mana tile, which is probably what I should have done. I should have probably just Gravity Welled to where the Crystal Cloaker is, then the Cloaker right here to prevent, you know, the opponent from taking the mana tile with, you know, 1-drop or something like that. But mostly to guarantee this Jack's True Sight next turn. Well, I didn't do that. So the better spot for it, if I was going to take this position where it's threatening anything he plays, should have been at the back. That is because if he wants to play something and keep it safe, he can just put it right here. Crystal Cloaker can't reach that spot because unless I attack him with Gravity Well, which I cannot unless it has an attack value, Crystal Cloaker cannot reach that spot. Lo and behold, what does he do? He's taking his time. Replaces. It actually does something very interesting. Alsuin Loremaster. He plays Alsuin Loremaster, attacks the well, knowing that the Crystal Cloaker cannot occupy this spot and attack it. Not that I really want to anyways, but if this had been something more powerful, I would not be able to have access to it. So immediately my judgment was, oh shoot, that's right. Well, you know, these things happen. This is misplay number 2. He just got a Gravity Well. So what is my thought? Well, I could utilize the mana tile, play Emerald Rejuvenator and Blood Tear, which puts a lot of power on the board. Nope. I decide to keep the Embla, keep the Jax. I'm going to have this mana whether he wants it or not. And we are going to replace the Rejuvenator. Well, because he got that Gravity Well, he now has access to all of these mana tiles, which is very important because now I get locked down. He took the mana well. He took the mana wells from underneath me, and I actually did not get the value out of them that I had initially thought I was guaranteed. So what I should have done is, excuse me, played the Emerald Rejuvenator, even if it wasn't healing me, just for that 4/4 pressure and the Blood Tear that turn, to make use of the mana tile so he could not. Because now with this Gravity Well, he gets to really work my board and lock me down, and he's almost free. This is the only Gravity Well standing between him and freedom now. So this is actually a pretty good play. It looks like a little bit of an investment, but it's actually only a 1-card investment on this board. Because Tuskboar goes back to the hand, he only spent the Juxtaposition to kill the Cloaker, and the Tuskboar is protected by the Gravity Wells. So he thinks on his Heartseeker, says, you know what, nah, I don't need to. It resets next turn. He can kill it with the Blood Tear. So with all the gravity wells gone, he is free to move about the world. I decide, you know what? I've put myself in this position. I should probably try to get myself out of it. So what I try to do is limit his movement on the board into a section that I know I am in control of. So I move the blood tier down beneath him. Bloodborne spell, play the Crystal Cloaker. I changed my mind and go behind him. I was kind of worried about Obscuring Blow for some reason. Just in case Riva had Obscuring Blow, it would have been pretty bad for me because that would give her 2 attack and backstab, and that would freely kill the Crystal Cloaker. However, I decided that it was worth the risk, just in case she didn't have it, to limit her mobility into this quadrant, which was sort of under the protection of my gravity wells and my minions. So I had access to most of the trading. So it kind of works out for me, where they step up into the gravity well, they clear it of course, leave these minions behind, and try to escape the minions, which is what I wanted really. If they were going to play stuff, I wanted them to have to play stuff where I had the most access to it. Now this is slightly out of reach of the Cloaker, but it is being provoked, and it is close to my general, so there are many ways that I can do. I decide that I'm going to actually replace the Snow Chaser because they're only being held down by this gravity well. If the general if I can't deal with this, and they decide that they want to cross the border into that side, Snow Chaser is actually going to be less valuable because it will not kill anything from infiltrate, and it will not gain me card advantage. So fortunately I pulled the Aspect of the Fox, which let me deal with the 4 winds. It is still provoked. I decide to trade the blood tier in because this lets my Crystal Cloaker stay at 4 attack, which means it does not immediately die to the Fox Ravager should I have attacked the Heartseeker with it. And it actually kind of paid off. He had Dancing Blades, which I found very unusual. I have not seen a Dancing Blades Riva in quite a while. This was a very good turn for him, even though he took a bit of damage. Gets a Heartseeker down, has his Ravager, has his Dancing Blades. Pretty imposing board to my nothing. So I decide I'm just going to go ahead and play Jack's True Sight with the Bloodborne spell. Let's see what he's got. It's immune to Scorn, it's immune to Battle Pando, it's immune to Ghost Lightning. It's pretty good. Unfortunately, he has a pretty good way to deal with it. These two were already dead, right? I was just hoping that I could deal with I could keep a couple of these on the board. That way I could start, regaining some momentum behind me. He's thinking about, he knows he can deal with them, right? Otherwise he wouldn't have done this. So, Phoenix Fire number 1, Phoenix Fire number 2. Now, he misplays here. I found this kind of weird. He has a Mist Dragon Seal in his hand that he plays on his Heartseeker, which allows him to shoot the final one, but they trade with each other. Now, my thought is, instead of doing that play and hitting me with the Ravager, why not simply Mist Dragon Seal the Ravager right here, so it's still next to me, kill that, and then you'd still have your Heartseeker on the board. So, slight misplay by the opponent. Now, I know I have the Embla. I know I have my Kinetic Surge next turn, so I don't want to jump the gun and play the Embla too soon. I decide I'm going to play Embla, and I'm going to get Lakian. Just like last game, Lakian gave us a Winter's Wake. It happens very frequently. Very frequently it happens. Now I go, oh man, Hailstone. I could Hailstone this. I could Hailstone that. Well, I don't really want to Hailstone that. Alright, so I replace the Hearth Sister. Keep the Hailstone just in case. You never know. They might play something scary. Or they might buff something, which it gets rid of buffs if it goes back to the hand. So I decide, alright, replace Heartsister, we get this Gravity Well. Now that is really cool, because with Winter's Wake, that's a lot of damage. So, and we get a second Embla. Now, peculiar turn for the opponent. I understand what they do and why they do it, but it is a little unusual. I guess he just had no idea of the potential that I could have with these wells, which is he leaves up all these wells because I think he thinks there's no way I kill him with Razorback, which is probably what he thought I had in the deck, thanks to my Jacks. But and he was trying to get all the Sojourner value he could out of it. But I still think that was not an excuse to not hit one of these, because lo and behold, it is exact lethal. Now, oops, I sped it up. I actually do something silly. I punch this and clear it because I thought I needed the movement of the wells, and then I move this one down and I go, oh, I thought I needed to clear this to move the wells into position. But boom, 4, 8, 12, 16. Exact lethal with Winter's Wake. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Not all things have to be cut and dry. You can play off meta and you can have fun doing it. So that's it for me today. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and yeah, I'll see you guys on the stream some other time. Have a good day otherwise. Grinch out.